believe it's been only 300 years. Man, it seems just like yesterday Union soldiers were burning down the Centroplex. Ah, how time flies. Well, anyway, one thing that has definitely changed in Baton Rouge in the last 300 years is that the French and Spanish explorers just don't come around like they used to. Where have you been? In 1682, the fertile lands near the mouth of the Mississippi River officially became a colonial possession. It was then that the French explorer La Salle claimed the territory for King Louis XIV. It wasn't until 1699 that the native outpost, later known as Baton Rouge, was discovered by the sibling adventurers Iberville and Bienville Le Moyne.
In 1699, as Iberville was exploring this area, that he first came upon the area of Baton Rouge. And this is when he noticed what the Indians called istruma, the red stick. This was a pole in the ground that marked the dividing line between the hunting grounds of two Indian tribes. The Indians called the area istruma, for red stick. The French gave it their name, Baton Rouge, and ever since then, from 1699, this area has been known as Baton Rouge.
No serious attempts at colonialization were made in this area until the 1760s, when the Treaty of Paris put all lands east and north of Bayou Manchac in British hands. This location soon put the British at odds with both the neighboring Spanish and American revolutionaries.
The Spanish governor of Louisiana at this time was Galvez. And Galvez was a very successful, not only governor, but a very successful military commander. And Galvez, in the first Battle of Baton Rouge, defeated the British and captured their fort at Baton Rouge and expelled the British from the lower Mississippi Valley. The Battle of Baton Rouge, the first Battle of Baton Rouge in 1779, was the only major military engagement to occur during the American Revolution in what would become the state of Louisiana.
Following statehood in 1812, the area around Baton Rouge experienced substantial economic growth. During this time, it also became home to Louisiana's state capital.
When Louisiana first becomes a state in 1812, the capital was originally located in New Orleans. The capital was moved for 1 year to Donaldsonville, believe it or not, in 1830. Unfortunately, and a Capitol building was actually built in preparation for moving the capital, but the legislators hated it, and they abandoned Donaldsonville and went back to New Orleans after 1830. And finally, during the Constitutional Convention of 1845, it is determined that the capital will have to be moved at least 60 miles from New Orleans. Now, they didn't actually explicitly say that the capital would be moved to Baton Rouge, but it was later determined by the state legislature that Baton Rouge would become the new capital, really the first high ground that one comes upon moving up the Mississippi River.
When the winds of secession blew through the area in 1860, Baton Rougians were initially hesitant to join the fledgling Confederacy. Soon, however, the state was seen to the same conflict that riddled much of the South.
The Second Battle of Baton Rouge occurs in August of '62, and it's in a failed attempt. The Confederates are ultimately unsuccessful in recapturing Baton Rouge from federal control. I should note that most of the fighting that occurred in the Battle of Baton Rouge occurred at Magnolia Cemetery. By Civil War standards, it was actually a pretty small affair, only several hundred casualties on each side, but it's Baton Rouge's one big claim to fame in terms of the military history of the Civil War.
Following Reconstruction, Baton Rouge remained a relatively small town. It isn't until the turn of the century that the metropolitan area that makes up modern Baton Rouge began to develop.
Major transformation will occur in the early 20th century, and specifically in 1909, when the Standard Oil Company of New Jersey decides to set up an oil refinery at Baton Rouge. This would eventually become Exxon and the modern Exxon oil refinery and petrochemical industry. So this really begins, and what we know as modern Baton Rouge really begins to take off in the early 20th century with the growth of the oil industry.
Despite 2 wars, 6 governments, and more than its share of controversy and excitement, one thing that Baton Rouge has continued to excel at during the past 300 years is knowing how to throw a party. It's a skill that comes in handy as we prepare to commemorate the Tricentennial of our capital city.
This is going to be the biggest party that the city's ever had. It will be 3 nights on the river in downtown Baton Rouge. All of it will be free. And we're expecting several 100,000 people over the course of the weekend. There will be 3 nights of fireworks, lasers, history, 3 nights of some of the most outstanding entertainment that the city's ever seen, and it'll all be a free birthday party, and we're expecting a lot of people to come. It'll be very, very big.
Because the Bonne Fete 300 celebration is expected to easily eclipse previous downtown events in both size and scope, nearly all of downtown Baton Rouge will be devoted to the upcoming festivities.
We're going to close off Front Street and Government Street in front of the Centralplex. There will be a main stage literally sitting across the street south of the convention center, and that will be the main stage where there will be all of these very well-known acts. There will be an alternative music stage on the other side of the old state capitol. There will be a gospel stage with people coming in talking and singing about gospel. There will be a storytelling stage where we think the folklore of Louisiana, people will come in and tell us about what it was like to grow up in Louisiana, tell us a little bit about the history. There will be a huge children's pavilion all the way around the old state capitol where children of all ages can come and learn about the history of the city, the history of the state, the French culture here, who discovered it, and actually participate going stage to stage to stage to stage, collecting a little bit of information and being entertained in the process. There will be a fireworks show that will come up over the river. There will be laser shows that will literally bounce off of all of the downtown buildings and put huge images on the walls of some of those buildings. It will be something that the city's never seen.
We'll be right back with more about Bonne Fete 300.
Just like their hungry descendants, Baton Rougeans have always had a keen talent for good cooking. Catch it, trap it, and grow it. It was all good eating, and still is. Check it out. Housed in a group of old slave dwellings salvaged from a local plantation, the Cabin Restaurant has been serving up authentic Cajun dishes to hungry locals and curious visitors for over 20 years.
For years, a lot of the tourists was asking us, what's in Cajun food, what's your secret? There's really no secret to shit. Your celery, your shallots, and your salt and your pepper. I think we just put a little bit more of it than most people attempt to put in it.
Despite the increasing popularity of Cajun cuisine around the world, the fundamental elements of Creole cooking have remained unchanged for hundreds of years.
You raised your own chickens, you had your own eggs. They raised their own hogs so they could make all this. So, and they were growing all their own vegetables. So that's where the recipes come from. It's just simple. What was cooked in the Cajun's homes 100 years ago, we're still cooking today. Cajun cuisine is our cuisine. It's the only one in the United States that is indigenous to the United States. It's the only original cuisine we have. Everything else was brought in from the Italians, the French, but that's ours. And it's grown so much in the 1980s with Paul Prudhomme going to New York, John Falls traveling around the world, bringing a taste of Louisiana to Russia, France, wherever John Falls goes. And the people that he feeds, they visit the United States. And they come to New Orleans, they come to the River Road, they're looking for the River Road cuisine. And here we are.
To the delight of visitors and natives alike, traditional Louisiana cuisine will be available at the Bonne Fete celebration in abundance, provided by none other than the most famous Cajun restaurant in the world, Mulat's.
We're going to be serving chicken and andouille jambalaya, chicken and andouille gumbo. But it also gives us an opportunity to have a fun weekend. And what we do is we make a weekend of it. It brings us to do something outside, which is fun.
Preparing home-style Creole dishes for an expected crowd of over 100,000 hungry visitors is no easy task. Preparation begins weeks before and involves planning, scheduling, and of course, a lot of groceries.
On one pot of jambalaya that we do, which comes out to about 25 gallons, it's usually about 100 pounds of onions, bell peppers, and celery combined. So about 70 pounds of onions, 20 pounds of bell pepper, 10 pounds of celery. We'll be going through almost 1,000 pounds of onions that particular week, just for the mix that we need for the party. And we're cooking something that we use within the restaurant itself too. So the restaurant uses a good bit of it also at the same time. And then we just prepare a lot of rice day prior to the festival. That rice is freshly cooked. All we do is steam it up the next day and we heat and mix. It's a combination of a whole lot of onions.
From shrimp to shawarma, there'll be a mouth-watering variety of foods available within the festival area. Be sure to sample a bite or two from these area restaurants.
Everybody knows that any good party has got to have cool tunes. And Baton Rouge has always had sort of a built-in jukebox, keeping in time for a growing city that's on the move.
The history of Louisiana music in Baton Rouge is very important to the rest of the world. Back in the 50s, here in Baton Rouge, we had people like Jimmy Clanton, John Fred and the Playboys, Johnny Rivers, Dale and Grace. Baton Rouge has had more #1 records on the pop charts than New Orleans.
With such a rich and varied musical heritage, it should be of no surprise that the history of Louisiana music, as it relates to Baton Rouge, dates back to colonial times and beyond.
The West Africans brought in with them chants, tribal chants, which evolved into the American military's cadence. It also developed the field hollering and work chants that became the basis for the blues, gospel. Those musics evolved into jazz and rock and roll. There's an old saying, blues and jazz had a baby and it's called rock and roll.
The growing popularity of rock and roll in the 50s and 60s led to a wider audience for the music of local R&B artists. Their versions of original blues standards served to inspire the work of many popular rock and roll acts.
Now, the Rolling Stones also recorded a song. One of their first singles was a song called I'm a King Bee, which was written by Baton Rouge blues native Slim Harpo. And Slim and Rayful Neal were, back in the 50s, one of those very important, both together were very important bluesmen.
From blues to jazz to rock and roll and back again, the sounds radiating from our city have spanned the many varieties of musical expression.
When I got the idea to write a musical, I started coming up with some ideas for some melodies, and I had to try to search to see what would be a good story that hasn't been done yet. And growing up here in South Louisiana, we've all heard the story of Evangeline. Even some of us read it in school, and I realized, well, that hasn't been done as a musical, and it's an excellent story for a musical.
One of the best-known legends of Acadian Louisiana, the bittersweet story of Evangeline and her prodigal lover Gabriel, will find its way to the Bonne Fete stage on Saturday, March the 6th. Conceived in concept by local music teacher Paul Toronto and co-written with actor Jamie Wax, this locally produced musical has already been previewed before enthusiastic crowds and has even spawned a CD of featured songs.
We've got a CD of the music, and the response has just been tremendous. And I think it's a really wonderful treatment of the story. That's sort of a timeless, universal story, but at heart is very much the story of the Acadians and very much a Louisiana story. What we've got here is a show that really tells the story in song. It's kind of a combination of an old-fashioned book musical with dialogue and with the scenes telling the story, but also sort of the modern musical tells the story more in its songs than it does in its scenes.
Besides being an extremely entertaining piece of musical drama, this tuneful update of the Evangeline tale also serves to expose many young Louisianians to a very important part of their state's past.
The kids have come to me since then, since being in the musical. They come with me with things they found on the internet, with books they found in the library. I think it's really fired an interest in many of them. They're looking up the people's names, the historic dates. It's really been a lot of fun. And our director here, Paige Wax, has also started a cross-curricular program working with other teachers at school to bring in the story into their classrooms, history classrooms, English classrooms. It's really taken off.
Selections from Evangeline will be performed on Saturday, March the 6th on the Festival of Words stage. Remember that the fun begins on Friday, March the 5th, when you can see country star Randy Travis at 9:45 on the Entergy main stage. Also on that same night, local rock and roll heroes Better Than Ezra return to Baton Rouge to perform at 10 on the Casino Rouge alternative stage. On Saturday, March the 6th, boogie the afternoon away when War, the Average White Band, the Gap Band, Kool and the Gang, and the Village People all perform between 4 and 10:30. The fun continues on Sunday when the main stage will feature Louisiana legends Tabby Thomas, Kenny Neal, and the Neville Brothers, while Baton Rouge's own Dash Rip Rock and Cowboy Mouth close it down on the alternative stage. Also closing each night of Bonne Fete is the stunning multimedia outdoor presentation, Illusions of the Night. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Angel. Je suis ici pour démontrer combien il est facile d'être affecté par la coutume et la mémoire française. Lorsque l'on est en contact avec les Français, nous pour la petite présentatrice de cette émission. Regardons maintenant, nous allons apprendre pourquoi les francophones mais représentant qu'un thème porté d'une célébration beaucoup plus importante, celle des présence des cultures françaises en Louisiane.
Evidence of French influence is obvious in every part of Louisiana life. The laws of the state, the civil law is based on the French Napoleonic Code. It is the only state with a civil law tradition and jurisdiction out of the 50. It is the only state that doesn't have counties. It has parishes, paroisse in French, which is part of that, once again, part of that French influence.
Throughout the last 300 years, the ties between the people of Louisiana and their mother country have remained strong, even when the territory was ceded to the King of Spain.
Louisiana, although it became a Spanish colony, never became Spanish. The people never looked to Madrid. They always looked to Paris. Culturally, linguistically, the arrival of the Acadians really solidified French culture in Louisiana and determined that it would remain French until its eventual acquisition by the United States in 1803.
The fierce determination of French immigrants such as the Acadians directly contributed to the unique character of our state and its people. Even now, nearing the eve of the 21st century, the cultural links between France and Louisiana remain evident.
Yeah, the tenacity of the French culture in Louisiana is a mystery. It's clung, it's 300 years, and there are still people in Louisiana who speak French, who are proud of their heritage, who know their history. It's very unusual. It's difficult to explain how this feeling and this culture has been able to survive all these years.
But survive it has, even to the point of being the focus of a larger statewide event, of which Bonne Fete 300 is only a regional highlight.
Franco Fete is the year-long celebration of the 300th anniversary of the French founding of Louisiana, actually the founding of the first permanent colony that later became a part of the Louisiana Territory. We've claimed that as our birthright, and the entire state is involved in celebrating this mile marker in time and finding ways, unique, original ways that each region can express that French connectivity and that connection to our origins. We've got these special events like the Degas exhibit in New Orleans. Shreveport is going to be the host city for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police doing their musical ride on their horses. Every region of Louisiana is discovering its French connections and finding ways to explore and express that so that visitors can enjoy that.
In addition to the obvious cultural significance of the Franco Fete celebration, the various events oriented around Franco Fete are expected to have tremendous economic impact as well.
By the end of 1999, we were anticipating $8 billion, or perhaps just a little bit more than that. So we think that this is an area that has a tremendous growth potential and one that can really make Louisiana people work. We're trying to create jobs for our people so that they can live and work in our state and their children can live and work here and enjoy what is truly wonderful about Louisiana, and that's our people and our atmosphere, our culture, our arts. All of those things are important to us and to our families, and so we're trying to create a really positive environment, and we think that our work actually does help to generate jobs.
Well, the countdown has begun. From 300 years to just a few days before thousands of people make their way to this very spot. Now, before you head out for the weekend's events, here's a couple of things to remember. Although Bonne Fete 300 is free, leave your ice chest at home. There'll be plenty of things to eat and drink downtown. The next thing, and probably the most important thing to remember, is get here early. I've got my spot staked out and I'm not leaving. Although I am getting pretty hungry. You know, I bet they have a jambalaya booth around here somewhere. Hey, will you watch my spot? I'll be right back.
Ce soir, s'il vous plaît.